of course I delivered. I've got a very close personal friend, an amazing human being, and an incredibly wise, successful entrepreneur, co-founder, executive vice president of ConferenceDirect. His name is Brian Richey. And like I said, Brian's been a close friend of mine for about 5 years now, Brian.
Easy,
yeah. And Brian has an amazing story. A guy that when I met him, immediately started pouring into me. He's been a mentor to me. He's been a guy that I've looked up to in so many ways. And I really wanted to have him on the show because he can bring so much value, particularly in these kind of turbulent, chaotic times for entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders, but also because of the person that he is, just the amazing man, the person that he is, as successful as he's been in business. His true success in life is the man that he is, the family that he's raised. He's got 3 amazing kids, 2 college athletes. I think they got their athleticism from him because he's also a former college athlete. We'll talk about that a little bit. He was
They got their SAT score from their mother.
There you go. There you go. But without further ado, Brian, so good to have you on the show, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for all the kind comments and mutual respect and admiration. You are a friend to our family, a leader for my kids, and they look up to you. And it's an honor to be here today because I listen to your work and you're doing great things for others. So any way I can contribute, I want to.
Yes, I appreciate that so much. I want to kind of dive right into your story because I think that's really impactful in and of itself. Starting out at Hilton, kind of starting from the bottom, building your way up, and then taking the leap to start ConferenceDirect, 22 years ago?
22.
Yeah. Former college football player, a quarterback for St. Mary's College, the Gales. Are you still a record holder there, Brian?
I am, but only because they shut the program down about 12 years ago.
Okay. A former amazing athlete that took his talents and skills into the business world. So tell us a little bit about that story. And particularly, I know I was so really inspired when you first told me the story of stepping away from that, let's call it kind of a cushy, safe corporate job that you'd built. I mean, you'd worked your butt off to get there, but you'd spent a number of years at Hilton and you had a decision to make. Am I going to stay in that comfort zone? Am I going to branch out and do something? Just tell us about that, man, because I think that's so valuable.
Man, oh boy, that's so true. So I did have, just under a 10-year career with Hilton, and I was in San Francisco, LA, Dallas, and Atlanta. So I'm not even from Atlanta. I'm from the West Coast. Jimmy's from Idaho. I'm from California. So, I did have a great career at Hilton. I was young. I was a director of recruiting for the whole organization. I was hiring people left and right, in charge of filling jobs at the Waldorf Astoria, San Francisco Hilton. At a very young age, I'm always so thankful to Hilton because they put me in some real great leadership opportunities young in my career. And, experience is such a great teacher, right? I mean, I reflect back on some of the jobs I was put in at 25, 26, right. 28, 29. And I was actually telling this to a young coach the other day who was frustrated with a game or something. I'm like, man, like the things I did when I was 25 and 26, I look at now at 53 and say, man, what was I thinking? But experience is the greatest teacher. And from a leadership perspective, I learned so much, not just successes, but failures and everything in between. And I'm always just so thankful for Hilton for giving me those opportunities. But my boss, Brian Stevens at Hilton at the time, he approached me and when I was, again, director of recruiting for the whole company, I had a nice career going at a time where my wife had just quit her teaching job. Our first child was born. I think he's 4 months old at the time, Connor. Connor's a football player. And I should add, Connor probably would not have played Division I football without the help of Jimmy Ferris.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Jimmy used to work Connor out quite a bit. And Connor and I always say, man, who knows if he'd gotten to Davidson without Jimmy and his help. But my friend, Brian, my boss, said, hey, I've got this idea. I think we could do it together. And I'd worked with him for, 8, 10 years. He recruited me out of college as well. So nice personal relationship, a lot of trust. And the reality is that the idea was, the concept was not too tricky. And I think sometimes that's what I tell entrepreneurs is sometimes the best ideas are right in front of us. They're very simple.
Simplicity.
Sometimes we try to overcomplicate them.
That's it.
And there's some great ideas out there ready to be had that are very simple in nature. And we just tend to look past them because we overcomplicate. But regardless, to kind of bring that all together, there was every reason in the world not to start ConferenceDirect with my friend. I mean, I think sometimes we're fearful, we're scared. We think of all the reasons I shouldn't do something. And the reality is my inspiration, what kind of got me over the hump, because again, we had just bought our first home, wife just quit her job, just had a baby, all these reasons not to do ConferenceDirect. And here I am saying to my wife, like, hey, I want to leave my great job and start this business with Brian.
Right.
And I will say that, you do have to have a belief in yourself and the person, not just the concept. Like,
yes.
Can we do this? And I did. I had confidence. I thought, gosh, between Brian and myself, how could we not succeed if we really gave our all and went all in and gave everything we had to this? How could we not succeed? We always have. But I'll finish with this. The interesting thing is, and I tell this to a lot of people considering going into business, or even when I'm recruiting people, which I still do to this day with ConferenceDirect, is sometimes what inspired me was not necessarily the best case scenario, right? We all tend to look at the best case. Hey, what happens if this goes well? That's kind of easy talk, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, that'd be great. But what really inspired me, and I would encourage everybody on this podcast or stream that's listening, if you're considering a business, is ask yourself, what is the very worst thing that could happen to me if this doesn't work? Mm-hmm. And oddly enough, what got me over the hump to give ConferenceDirect a start in a really, probably it seemed like a very tough time in my life, just with a baby and a kid, just expenses, things like that, was not an evaluation of the best case. It was an evaluation of the worst case that made me say, man, this is worth giving a shot. Because I remember saying to my wife, the worst case is, do you like our life today? And she's like, oh, we have a good life today. And I said, worst case, I think I've treated people well. I think I've had success. I know people at the other brands. Worst case, if this doesn't work, we'll just come back to the life we have right now.
Absolutely. Yep.
And so I think sometimes the inspiration is not from, hey, if this goes great, I get this. I think true inspiration can come from, what's really the worst thing that could happen to me?
Yep.
When you think of it that way, you say, well, why not give this thing a shot?
I heard a guy talk about that fear element, right? That fear that is kind of a given anytime you're considering making a move like you were making. And he talked about, you hear people say all the time, concepts like, turn that fear on itself, use it against itself. And he talked about, rather than saying, man, there's a lot of fear about stepping out and doing this, and what if we fail? He said, I always talk myself into fearing, what if I don't do it?
Right.
What if I don't take the shot?
That's right.
Like, I fear missing out on the possibility, if I don't take that shot. And again, that takes some courage. That takes that as I like to define it, the ability to be afraid and go anyway. You said it takes some belief in yourself, but ultimately it comes down to, knowing that you've got something that maybe it's been a lifelong dream, maybe it's something that came to you quickly, but having that courage, overcoming that fear and stepping out and doing something, taking the chance, because as they always say, that growth, that true success lies just right outside your comfort zone. Right. And that's why I was always inspired by that story, because so many people, Brian, I mean, we let good be the enemy of great so often in our lives. You had a great situation with Hilton, but you knew that there was better available.
Yeah. Something you said too, the gentleman who I started the business with, his name is Brian Stevens. And I did think to myself, like, he's a hard charger. If I say no, he's going to do this. He's he's not going to rest. He's not going to not do this because I said no. He's going to say, well, I really want Brian Richey, and so I thought, gosh, I might be missing out on something really great here. And it's all because of this fear. And again, what's the worst thing could happen here? The worst thing is, I come back into a good life I already had. Yep. But at least consciously, I know I gave it everything I had, and I took a shot.
So starting with just you and Brian, right, have grown to 350, 400 associates, built the company to, I think the last time we chatted some years ago, I hope you don't mind me disclosing this, $750 million in total sales. I mean, you guys have taken this thing over the top, and the last couple of years were really good, smooth sailing, and then COVID hits, right? Which is something that so many businesses, big and small, are dealing with. So many leaders are trying to figure out, how do I navigate this crisis? How do I navigate this chaos? I know you're passionate about leadership.
Yeah.
You guys, wherever, as fortunate I've been to go to Brian's house and see his personal library, it's a Barnes and Noble of leadership and personal development books. So, we talked a little bit off camera about, you said that this is definitely your most challenging year. You have had to lead more right now than you ever have in the 22 years of the company. So talk about that a little bit, and, maybe just a few things that you think would be helpful for business owners or senior level leaders or management that are going through it and trying to find their way through this.
I think, first of all, one thing, when I'm on group calls or individual calls, I don't sugarcoat the times. They're tough. And I think the more real we are about the situation as it is, the better we can deal with it as it is.
Right.
But I also, what I say to people when I talk to them one-to-one is, do you want this model to work? And I just ask them point blank, do you want this to work? And they say, yeah, I love my job. I want this to work. And I said, then we know not doing it is not an option. The option is we got to stay in the game, and, we got to continue to move forward. And somehow we got to figure this out.
Yep.
And, one thing that I really have tried to emphasize in this time, and gosh, Jimmy, in 22 years since we started ConferenceDirect, so an executive at Marriott once said to me, hey, if someone would have told you, he told me this a few years ago, if someone would have told you before you started this business, hey, I just want you to know, in the first 17 years of being in business, you're going to go through 9/11, SARS, swine flu, ash cloud. If you knew you were going to go through all this, would you have started it in the first place? That's a heck of a question.
Yes.
Just being realistic, we have been through a lot in 22 years. And I'd like to think ConferenceDirect is built tough just because we have been through so much in 22. Anything that's affected travel has affected us.
Yes.
And 9/11 hurt because we were just starting to make money, and it was like, but we survived. And these other issues, hurricanes, everything, we have survived. Now this current time has been the biggest challenge of them all, and it's uncharted, and, when will it end? And there's so many questions. Right. And so Jimmy, one thing I've been really trying to work with our ConferenceDirect sales team and associates is, first of all, I got to know, do you want this to work out? Right? Because if you want it to work out, I'll be all in as your leader. I'm going to be with you on this journey. If you don't, I understand. But our mindset, right? We talk about mindset, Jimmy. Yes. It's got to be, we're in, we're going to win, right? We're in this thing, And so when I know people want it and they want to stay in, that makes me more motivated to lead and stay inspired and help kind of, pull through this tough time. But the thing I'm focusing on, Jimmy, quite a bit with our folks is, look, right now, there's not a lot of big wins available. Let's focus on small wins.
Yes.
In small windows. I think traditionally in business, we say, hey, we need a 12-month marketing plan. Hey, we need a 12-month this. We need a 12-month that. But right now, we don't know what 12-month looks like. 12 months, maybe there's a vaccine, maybe there's not. In 12 months, maybe there's a flat. I don't know. We're hopeful, yes. We're optimistic, but we don't know. So what I've been trying to get our folks, our salespeople focused on is small wins in small windows. in our business right now, there's not a lot of big trade shows or big meetings to book because people are concerned, but
Right.
they're smaller, and there's account acquisitions, and there's retention is, there's a lot of small wins available. And I think that is what I'm trying to direct people to. Is I'm not trying to sound uninspired or unmotivated. Go for the big win. But right now I'm like, let's just get a bunch of small wins. And small windows. What could you reasonably achieve in the next 60 days? What could you reasonably achieve in the next 60 days that would have a positive impact on your business as we come out of this, right? And then, so focus on 60 days. Maybe it's customer database, customer relationships, getting birthdays, anniversaries, knowing your customers better. What can you do in 60 days? And you get to the end of that 60 days, re-up for another 60.
Yep. Reevaluate. Yep.
Reevaluate.
And don't you think too that it all these cliches about life and business, they always come back around in tough times, but I think, they're cliche because they're really true. That it really, to use an old football term, it really comes down to blocking and tackling.
So true.
Right? Like, just execute on the true foundational planks in our platform, just the true staples of our business. Talk about that a little bit, because I think sometimes, again, turbulent times, chaos, people are like, oh my God, we got to reinvent the wheel. We've got to change everything. We got to do it. Belichick used to say all the time, we didn't get beat because, we didn't have the latest technology or because we didn't study enough. We got beat because we couldn't tackle and we couldn't get him off the field on third down. Right. It's the simple things, right?
Right. Well, and I think, to that, Jimmy, in moments like this, I always say, partnerships in business, when things are good, everybody hugs, high five, celebrate success. That's one thing, right? And I talk about this a lot in my industry. Partnerships are galvanized in tough times. Like, they become very clear. Is this someone who's with me or not?
Yes.
Right now in this moment. And one thing we've been trying to tell our people is that almost our entire customer relationship will be judged by our performance right now. In these troublesome times, did we run and hide, or did we jump in?
Yes.
And help our customers in their worst moment? And there's been a lot of worst moments since this thing started for some of our accounts. And, the blocking and tackling for me right now is, first of all, you got to be visible. Customers, I heard a story recently from a financial guy, and he said, I said, hey, how you doing? He always asks me, he handles our business, and he always says, hey, Mr. Richey, how you doing? How's your business? And I turned around and said, hey, you always ask me, how's your business? And he said, actually, I picked up a few new accounts recently. And I'm like, tell me more. I want to know, because if you got a story, I can tell someone else. I want to know.
Success leaves clues, right?
That's right. That's right. And he said that he had found that he went back to customers that had said no to him previously. He went back to them and said, hey, this is a tough, hard time in the financial world. If even on a complimentary basis, I could offer you any assistance or answer a question, please let me know. I'd be happy to help. Well, he said his phone rang off the hook. Man. And he said what the people said was, and I'll use the young man's name, Mike. He said, we have not heard from our financial planner, our manager, and we are very nervous. We are not sure what's going on. And even though we're not using you, you still took the time to call us.
Yep.
And so this is the time to be visible. I mean, this is a time we're all going to be judged. This is, as business people right now, we will be judged. Did we hop in? And I call ConferenceDirect people, I have so much admiration for our staff, our workers. I call them industry frontliners. And that's not to minimize the true frontliners, but in our industry, ConferenceDirect associates are frontliners. They're jumping in, they're solving problems, they're handling cancels, they're handling rebookings. Versus the financial guy, his competitors were hiding. And I've said to our associates, now's the time not to hide. Now's the time to be visible more than you've ever been.
Well, and build those relationships and add value right now, even if it doesn't lead directly in this moment to a sale or the bottom line. You're adding value so that when we come out of this and things open back up, you've built those relationships with people. You've shown a lot of goodwill. Now you've got X number of potential customers just because you took the time to do the small things in the crisis. And again, I think that's so important. But again, Brian, those are attributes or characteristics that you're displaying there of great leadership, right? I mean, those are things that some companies make it or some companies fail based on the quality of their leader. And so right now, going through this time, again, staying on this leadership topic.
Yeah.
I think that, Jim Rohn used to say, if you want things to get better, you've got to be better, right? And you've always understood, we've always talked about this, you've always understood that leadership, from your perspective, leadership starts with me. In fact, you have a phrase that you said that I've coined as my phrase now, where it's a little off this topic, but I want to bring it up because I just love it. Where you taught me that idea of what you call Richie's first, I say Ferris first, right? Like anytime something goes wrong or doesn't go the way I want it to go, the first person I ask is myself. What did I do or not do to contribute to this outcome or this situation, right? And so what you're telling me is that it's about your own personal growth and continuing to be better yourself so that you can better lead others. So you have just a true kind of treasure chest of gems that you can share. What are some of your kind of personal values, your keys to effective leadership, keys to success, if you will, and how are you, some of those that you're applying right now to kind of keep your team on track, inspired, motivated, and going the right direction?
Well, one thing, and I know there's a lot of people handle counts and things like that on this. And one thing, Jimmy, I just want to close out that last thing is, now is the time you also need to lead with empathy.
Absolutely.
Like you've got to lead with empathy. Like if you're calling your customer, like I tell this to ConferenceDirect, do not call a customer right now and be like, hey, what about 2022? What about 23? The first thing you do is, how are you?
Yes.
How are you doing? And if they're not doing well, drop business, call them later, call them another time. But we need to lead with empathy first, business second. And that, I think, is in this moment, like I've got to lead that way too. So whenever I have a group call at ConferenceDirect or I have a one-on-one call with ConferenceDirect, the very first thing I do, if there's a limited number of people, if there's like 20 people, I can't do it, is I just go around and just say, hey, before we get into business, I need to know how you are.
Yes.
Lori, how are you? Owen, how are you? What are you doing to stay safe? What are you doing to stay healthy? What are you doing to keep a positive mindset? And then we'll go business. But first thing is first. Right now, I would encourage you, just lead with empathy. But to leadership in general, Jimmy, and I know we've talked about this, but I feel that, the essence of leadership, and particularly crisis moments, but also when things are good too, is trust, and to me, with no trust, no leadership.
Absolutely.
No trust, with no trust, you're just not able to fulfill organizational potential, individual potential, like fulfill your greatest. And I feel like a lack of trust is like, whenever I've had a lot of people call me and say, hey, I'm taking over a new office, or hey, I got a new job. The first thing I always say is, do not throw in any hard policy in those first few weeks. Don't even do it for the first month. Go all in on relationships. Go all in on trust. Take people to lunch. Ask them what they enjoy. As I always like to say to people that I've taken over responsibility, and even to people this day, I say, what do I have to do as a leader to help you be the best you?
Yes.
How do I extract the best out of you?
Yes.
Just tell me. Because
contribution, significance.
Yeah.
How can I help you be better?
Yeah. It's funny, Jimmy. I used to have some people say, you know what? I'd have veteran people. I ran this big office for Hilton. People would say, I'll let you know if I need you. They're veterans. But then I had some Myers-Briggs people, like extroverts, who are like, hey, if you could come by every morning and say good morning, that'd mean a lot to me. I said, hey, no problem.
Yeah.
Good morning.
But isn't that a key, Brian? Because so many leaders, I can take it back into the sports realm. So many coaches will try to implement blanket policy. Hey, we treat everybody the same. This is me. This is what you can expect from me. I'm consistent. We treat everybody the same. And that is such an antiquated model of leadership, in my opinion. Isn't it really about figuring out each one of your people? And in these huge companies, again, that might not be possible, right? Scale tends to break things in some cases, but to know the people that are working directly for you, know them personally, what motivates them, what buttons you can push, when they need you to put your arm around them and when they need an ass chewing. It comes down to really knowing your people, right?
It does. But it's funny. I've had this leadership exchange with some other potential leaders, and they kind of bounce it around, and they say, well, Brian, how do you know this about people? And I say, oh, very simple. You ask them.
Ask them. People will tell you a lot about themselves if you just ask them, right?
Right. And like I say, it's not a tricky subject, but it becomes trickier if you avoid it. Like I said, even when I recruit, I believe central casting is really important when you're recruiting. Like, you analyze the person, you analyze the job, and you sit there and say, man, I want this person to be crazy successful in that job. Well, knowing the person and knowing the job, is it going to work? And be willing to say no, if not. But I used to tell people when I'm recruiting them, like, I want to find something that you just feel like, bam, that's me. And it just, your greatness comes out. And, that kind of leads to one of my other leadership things, Jimmy, is whenever I have run an office or been around people, I'll take like my number 2 and my number 3, and we'll talk about, hey, how do we want to run this office? How do we want to do this? And what I'll do is I'll point at the door entry to the office. Mm-hmm. And I'll say, that is really important. And they're sitting there going like, the door? And I'm like, we have got to make people want to walk through, run through, excitedly go through, crash through that door every day. And we've got to create an environment where trust is huge. I always call it if I have any friends from Mt Vernon watching, I always say that trust bucket, when it's full, we perform better as a team.
Absolutely.
When the trust bucket comes down, the organization falls apart. But when they walk through that door every morning, they want to say, I believe in my boss. I believe in my leader. We'll say not boss, leader. I'm in a great work environment. Yeah, there's some bad days, but we get through them. It's not perfect. I always say to anyone, if you're looking for a perfect workplace, you will look for a lifetime.
You'll be looking for a long time.
Yeah. And, but if you can just make people like, man, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
I think the chances for success are much greater.
Again, it's really simple. Make people feel like you truly care about them. Like you said, you care about their family and their success.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that creates that true buy-in, right? Where people are so much less inclined to leave for a job that'll maybe pay them a couple $1,000 more because
I agree.
Because they'll say, no, I love this job. I love this company. And, my leader, not the boss or the leader, they feel a personal connection to those people that they've trusted. Right. And I just think that's so important. That's the R right here in Be a Pro stands for reliability, be reliable, right? Which is all about trust. We want to be people that others can trust to, do their job well. And we want to work with, we want to hire people that are reliable people. I think trust is such a huge factor.
Do people like playing for the Patriots?
Say that again.
Do people like playing for the Patriots?
Not particularly.
Oh, that caught me off guard.
Yeah, no, not particularly. People here's the thing about New England. People love the outcome, right? You go there. If you're a veteran that's been other places, you go there because you want to win.
Right.
And you've matured to a point where you can deal with the culture and, kind of the way Bill runs the show up there. Rookies that come in, they don't know any different. They don't know any better, right? They've never been anywhere else. And so they don't really have a frame of reference. That culture is different than what I was describing. Bill has a one size fits all policy and he treats everybody the same. And again, it works, it gets results, but you don't, other than Tom Brady, you don't see guys staying there for significantly long periods of time. The turnover there, guys, some of their best players, they'll draft a guy and he'll last 2 or 3 years. They'll get the most out of him. And then when he's up in free agency and it's time to sign somewhere else, they get out of there. They can't wait to get out of New England.
Good point.
Yeah. But speaking of that, this is something I wanted to touch on with you, because obviously such a huge part of my platform of Be a Pro is all of these lessons that I learned on my journey to the NFL, all of the practices and habits and tools that I collected along the way that I think are important that you can apply to pretty much any area of life or business. I read a study 2015 or 2016 that said somewhere around 95% of Fortune 500 CEOs are former athletes of some kind. At some point, they were former athletes. That number seems really high to me, but let's just even say that for sake of the argument, it's 80 or 85%. That's still really high. What do you think maybe that correlation is? And being a former athlete yourself, what do you think are some of the characteristics or the traits or the habits or the tools that athletes have in their toolbox from all those years of working their way up, whether it just be high school, college, or into the pros? What is the application there? I mean, what do you think? Yeah. What do you think is some of those tools that are really impactful?
You know, it's interesting, Jimmy. When I was director of recruiting for Hilton, and first let me preface this by saying, I know, in fact, the guy I'm in business with is not an athlete, but he's very successful.
Yeah.
You know? So I never like to say, hey, if you're not an athlete, you can't be successful. But it did help me, and it contributed to me, my foundation as a leader, as a person. It's irrefutable. And when I was director of recruiting for Hilton, there's no question when I would be recruiting a person in Chicago, and I saw that a person had been state swimming champion 400 IM for Indiana, I knew the price they had paid. You know, I knew they had, because pool time's terrible for all high schools. So they had to get up at 4 a.m., go swim, get home, get ready for school, go to school, get homework done, go to bed. Or I mean, like the discipline and not relying on like self-starter discipline, like ability to get things done, and just swim lap after lap, just seeing that in, this in, that in, this in. You know, that's a very focused, disciplined person. You know, I thought a little bit about this before. It was kind of interesting. When I turned 40, my company thoughtfully threw a nice party for me. And, you know, there's a lot of people there. And I gave a speech called First 40, Next 40. And part of the reflection on my first 40 was this athletic experience you're referring to. And to the point, I still get chills when I think about walking into a stadium on a Friday night when I was 16 years old, and I'm 53 and I'm still thinking about it. Still gives me chills. But what I talk about is like using like a huddle is like a microcosm of leadership and society, and 11 guys holding hands 80 yards away, you know, from needing to score, right? Like we can argue with each other. We can hold hands. Like we need to go 80 yards.
Yes.
And just as a quarterback being put in those positions where you know, if someone drops a pass, was it better that I yelled at them on the spot and got in their face, or just said, next one, maybe yell at practice the next day. But in that moment, you know, sports presses you on being a leader. It pressed me on being a leader. It's irrefutable. It made me disciplined. But, you know, I always think back to those huddles, and it's 11 guys, 11 different personalities, 11 different backgrounds, 11 different places where they came from. But somehow we needed to come together and go 80 yards. And, you know, if I got sacked and maybe that left tackle let someone through and guy knocks me down blindside, you know, is it best to yell at that guy or just like, hey, on the ball, let's go, you know? And I just reflect back on, and I think too, that one thing sports was great for me, and I think it's great for others, is it is such a great, like if you cannot handle adversity, if you can't handle failure, you can't play sports.
Can't.
And
you start learning that in, you know, I started playing football at 8 years old. So I started, even though I wasn't conscious of the concept of adversity or whatever. I mean, I was 8 years old, would go home after we lost a flag football game upset, and my parents would say, hey, you know, X, Y, and Z. And we would have a conversation that now looking back was about how to handle adversity, how to grow from it. What are you going to do? Are you going to stay in your room and cry, or do you want to go out with dad in the backyard and he'll throw some passes so next time you make that catch? Simple things like that you start learning at 8-10 years old as an athlete.
Yeah, and I look, and I use this actually at ConferenceDirect training. I use this sports model, and I think this is important because I know there's a lot of sales, people on this. Is Chipper Jones was a first ballot Hall of Famer, considered one of the great third basemen of all time. And this is what's interesting to me about that model. So, and I use this in training. So Chipper Jones batted 300, and we all sit here and say, man, that's incredible.
Right.
But when you really look at it from a numbers standpoint, that means he failed 7 out of 10 times.
Yes.
So what I talk about in our sales training, ConferenceDirect, is what made Jones great was not how he handled the 3, it's how he handled the 7. And in sales and customers, when you're going after prospects in different business, they don't always say yes. I think you need the peace of mind of knowing I gave everything I could. I was all in. It was a great effort. They just said no for an uncontrollable reason.
Yep.
The truth of the matter is I got to get ready for the next.
I was just going to say it's two things. How do you handle rejection, right? How do you handle not making the play? And then are you able to compartmentalize it, have a short memory, whatever sports, how many coaches in your life, Brian, would say, hey, you got to have a short memory. Forget about the interception you threw on the last drive. We need you right now locked in right here. Yeah. That ability to move on to the next play. Because again, as we talked about earlier, what's the most important play?
Next.
The next one. What's the most important sales call?
Next.
The next one, right? It's always, even if the previous one went really well.
True.
That doesn't only apply when it doesn't go well to have a short memory. No. It also applies, you can use some of the momentum and you come off of a great call, closed a big deal, or I made a great catch or something like that, take that momentum in the next play. But if you turn around and you're unfocused and I drop a crucial catch the next time they come to me.
Yeah. So I know no one in business, Jimmy, that has 100% conversion rate. I know no one in business. I know no one in baseball that's batted 1,000. I know no receiver that hasn't dropped a pass. I just don't know anyone. So I at least when we're training sales at ConferenceDirect, I do tell people let's strive for perfection, settle for excellence, right? Let's strive for perfection, settle for excellence. We know we're not going to get every account, but let's make sure every account we give everything we have. And if it comes up short, we've got to be able to, like you said, short-term memory. And I always use the football example. You throw an interception, and I know this, people boo you.
They boo you.
You throw a touchdown, they cheer for you. And it can swing. You just got to get over both, right? You got to get ready for the next. And I do use Tom Brady as an example too, because when he throws an interception, you feel his personal responsibility. He's always throwing his helmet down.
Yes.
But I take that as he's like to his teammates, that's not going to happen next time. Next time it'll be a different outcome.
Exactly. He's so upset at himself because he knows that he can do better. He's mad that he let you down, that he put the team in a bad position. But again, I use Brady too as the example. People always say, what makes Tom Brady great? Well, there's 100 things, right? But one of the things that stands out the most to me is his ability to what I call compartmentalize, which is to take the negative, put it over here in a compartment, close the latch, lock it, and it does not affect him. The pick that he threw the last series, he's going to come out and sling it the next series. It doesn't affect him. The emotions from that previous loss or bad play do not bleed into what he's doing today or this play or this series. I think that's such a huge piece. I want to get to a question here. Guys, as you know, I've got my amazing assistant, Janelle, who is running the chat today. So I should have probably mentioned that earlier on. I was just so excited to dive in with Brian. But if you guys have questions, this is the time to ask, because Brian's an amazing resource. And we want to make sure that we pick his brain as much as possible. But I got a question from Patty. She says, hey, Brian, I'm new to an organization, and I've had an employee who is unmotivated and just not participating as his manager. What is a great opening question I can ask him to get better insights for what's really bothering him? So kind of back to what you were talking about, asking people, how are you? What do you need? What can I do for you?
Yeah, I think in that case, and I know it's not easy. It's frustrating for leaders to come in and see someone not fulfilling their potential, not doing their job, particularly right now. Like there's a lot of good people that would probably be very excited to have that job.
Right.
Unemployment rate is high, and there's a lot of good people looking for work. And here's someone with a job who's not doing their job, and that's frustrating. But he's your employee, and as leaders, we got to extract greatness out of the tough ones, the easy ones, the medium ones. Somehow, if we're going to lead, we got to extract greatness out of all of them. So in that case, honestly, I think I'd pull them in, and I would have the generic conversation of, as your leader, what do I need to do to get a better result out of you? Because what you're achieving right now is not acceptable.
Right.
I also might go a little old school on them and say, I need you to write down some goals or something, just so I know your head's in this game.
Yes.
And I need to know your head's in the game, because to me, it sounds like this person's, head may not be in the game a little bit. I wouldn't want to have a one-way conversation. I'd want to make him, write some things down or say some things and demonstrate evidence of just caring. Like, do you even care about this job?
Right.
Man, like, there are so many good people looking for work right now. And if this person can't find the simple inspiration, but I would ask, how can I help you be the best version of you? How can I extract your greatness? But I definitely, to me, that person needs some accountability, right? I would ask them to do something as part of this. We got to be better activity.
I think I would just tell him, I would just say, hey man, you need to learn how to be a pro.
There you go.
And then ask him what I can do to help him be a pro. Brian, again, I've had the amazing opportunity to know you personally and spend a lot of time with you. Our viewers don't have that. They haven't been so fortunate. But while I've got you here, I want to get a couple of book recommendations from you, because I'm a big believer in finding mentors and finding wisdom and knowledge and learnings and teachings in books and videos. Every resource that we have at our disposal now in 2020, I think we need to utilize that. And books have always been a great source of learning and inspiration for me. And you've put me on to a handful of great books. Okay. What are you reading now? What's your favorite book of all time? What are a couple books you'd recommend for anybody at any point in their personal development or business journey?
Right. So, and by the way, I meant to that last question too. Maybe you asked for small wins and small windows to the uninspired employee.
Yes.
What can we get done in the next 30 days, man? Just to show some movement here.
Yep. Set a few small targets to hit.
Yeah. Just get them moving. And candidly, they need to show some inspiration on their end too. Jimmy, the books thing. My wife is such a better reader than me. Molly reads books like this, she's incredible. So I feel like a book slouch when I compare myself to her.
But that's because you go through and highlight.
I know, it's so slow.
Listen, this guy, Brian, doesn't read books. He dissects them. So this kind of blew my mind. I'm not as committed as you are, but highlighting, then goes through after he finishes a book and does a detailed book report of the key points. And it's in depth. So
a couple books. There's a book called Grit by Angela Duckworth. Yes. And the reason I like Grit is I think we're all looking for little differences, right? Like what's the difference between good and great? What's the difference between success and failure? And I tried to study it for years. And I have a lot of different answers and a lot of different theories, but about 5 years ago, I got turned on to this theory of grit. And I would encourage everyone on this call, just Google Grit, Angela Duckworth. There's a TED Talk, and it's only 7 minutes, and it's so good. Mm-hmm. It really is. When I saw that, it inspired me. So when I train ConferenceDirect, I use a lot of the grit material, the grit mentality. And basically what it is passion plus perseverance, going through obstacles over a long period of time. And she talks about why at West Point do some kids fail and some succeed? Why in New York City do some kids that you think have a less chance to succeed at school versus kids that look like they have a sure thing, but the kids sure things don't? The kids, like, what happens there? And her theory is this whole issue of grit. and grit made the difference. And I talk about it at ConferenceDirect. I say, you ask me for success, I'll tell you that grit might be one of the things. I know it's not a tricky answer, but so Grit's a great book. There's a book called Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. The theory of the book is he always says, talent can be learned. Greatness can be learned. And it's, some people think I wasn't born with it. And his thing is it's available to everybody.
Yes.
And there's some nuggets in that book it's a boring book, but it's a good book from a leadership standpoint. I use it a lot mentally, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, oldie but goodie.
All-time favorite.
And Jimmy, what I always say is if you only read the first chapter is be proactive. I used to take that chapter with groups I was in charge of and just focus on that. Cause I'm like, at the end of the day, we may have great ideas. We may have great thoughts. We may have great intentions. We may have great. But if we don't take that first step,
that's it.
If we are not proactive, all those good ideas and intentions will just be for naught. A couple lighter books I read, Purpose Driven Life, Rick Warren.
Yeah.
Little religious book, faith book. I read it every year, every February during Lent.
Yeah.
One chapter a day. And the reason I read that is I think all of us sometimes get lost and kind of, what's going on with my life? This book is great because the first question it is, why are you here on earth?
Right.
Why are you here? And I think we all have different thoughts on that, right? It's a great book. It kind of repurposes me on, am I really using my God-given talents and abilities to the best, right?
Brian, I talk a lot in my seminar, and a big piece of this platform is what I call the shift in mindset from success to significance.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about that, right? That
absolutely
success kind of being that idea of what can I get? Significance is about what can I give? What contributions can I make? How can I be impactful? And you truly, and I want everybody watching this to know, and if I've never said this to you face to face, I want to say it, like, you embody somebody who pursues significance and to be impactful and to be somebody that's in service to other people. And I've seen obviously what you do with Atlanta Youth Academy, amazing organization that you have contributed, thousands of dollars, hours, something you're truly passionate about. And I just think that's so important, Brian. I think that's one of the things that, as I said at the beginning, that makes you such an amazing guy and far exceeds any business success that you've had. It's the significance and how significant you've been in the lives of people that have worked for you. And of course your family and people like myself. And so I just wanted to say that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hey, one more book I was going to say, and you'll like this one. It's titled, If You Want to Walk on Water, You Got to Get Out of the Boat.
Yeah, I love it. We talked about that. Remember?
Right.
Isn't that great? Yeah.
It's by John Ortberg. And the basic theory of it is how many times do we just let things pass in life? Because we're afraid to get out of the boat.
That's it.
Versus maybe having a little faith in ourselves, right? Like just a belief that, hey, I am pretty good at this. And I know this industry. I know, why would I be afraid to get out of the boat? And I think that's another annual read, because the theory of the book is we're just letting things pass by because of this fear of getting out of the boat.
Comfort zone.
That book reminds me that, hey, get out of the boat on occasion, man. Do something, like you said, comfort zone.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's just such an old cliche idea, but it's true, right? That comfort zone, that place where we've been for X amount of years or however long in our life, it can be really scary to step outside of it. But taking that first step, even just seeing what's out there, because to your point, the story that you told, I think, is so impactful. If you step out and it's scary and you fail, you can always step right back in. You can always go back to
win back
to be in. But, to use another great quote, I heard a guy say this, posted somewhere on social media a couple of weeks ago. You can't be who you are and who you want to be simultaneously.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah.
Right. So in order to grow and become the person that you want to become or you need to become, you can't remain who you currently are. Those two things can't coexist.
It's true.
So to make any progress, to take any step towards having something that you want, going for a goal, going for a big dream, you got to start the process of becoming that person. You can't stay who you are and be who you want to be at the same time.
Yeah.
Final question for you, man. And I'm going to probably put you on the spot here. There's no right answer, but I want to know from you, Brian Richey, what does it mean to you to be a pro?
Yeah. So anyway, I thought about this, and, I think my thing, Jimmy, is a lot of what we talked about, right? Failure, adversity, get out, so much of what we talked about. But I think the thing I would kind of conclude with, to take all of what we talked about and bring it together, is I do not believe in business, if you're going to be a business pro, but I think you'll say this relates to professional athletics too. There's no magic wand. And what I'm saying is there's no easy way. There's no easy route. I think today it makes me sad. Sometimes the younger generations, they want a magic wand where they touch something and everything turns to gold.
Yep.
And what I believe to be a pro, to be effective at business or whatever you're doing, is what ultimately will separate you from being good or great or mediocre to a pro is ultimately going to be a series of small, subtle differences done consistently over time.
I love it. Yes.
And being able to stick to it.
Yep.
I think I just see a lot of people, makes me sad. They quit fast. They quit FedEx, Fred Smith went bankrupt 5 times. Man, what if he had quit after the second time? We wouldn't have this incredible service we all lean on so much.
Right.
He failed 3, 4, and then the 5th time. And I just think there's people that want the magic wand that quick. It doesn't exist. And if it does, it's not going to be sustaining or long-term. It's not. So I think to be a pro, it's all about the small stuff. I think it's consistency. It's every day. It's mindset. It's, everything we talked about, but just being able to do it consistently over time, not just for a month. Hey, I had a good month and a bad month. Well, I had a bad month, I quit. No. Keep going.
I talk a lot about consistency, and what Belichick taught me about consistency. You don't have to focus on the big picture, the whole season or the whole year. He said to me one time after a practice, he said, "Man, you had a great practice yesterday. You had a great practice today. Come out, have another great one tomorrow, and just keep stringing them together." Right. And his whole philosophy was, the people that have followed the platform, and they're probably tired of hearing me say this, but enough great days make a great week. Enough great weeks make a great month. Enough great months make a great year. And a year from now, you'll wake up and say, "Damn, that was a great year." Right. But it started, and it was able to happen because you chose to be great, the best version of yourself. You chose to be a pro consistently every single day. And that added up to those small wins, like you were talking about. Those small little wins add up to winning the Super Bowl, winning the championship, getting the deal, taking the company to the next level, right?
Yeah. And the thing I tell our folks is, singles and doubles win a lot of games.
Absolutely.
I mean, singles and doubles win a lot of games. Most people go, "Hey, I know home runs are sexy, but if we only hit singles and doubles, we will win a lot of games."
Yeah. Man, this was great, Brian. I appreciate you so much. Like I said, you've been so amazing for me, such an amazing mentor. And I definitely wouldn't be here without you and your contributions to me. And I know you added a ton of value for my viewers here. Everybody that tuned in, I appreciate you guys. If you're watching the replay after the live stream has ended, feel free, still drop those questions and comments in the chat box, and Brian will go back through and answer some of those. I'll certainly get to them, but we just appreciate the support. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Until next week, as always, I challenge you guys, go out and be a pro. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jimmy.